Hi guys, I haven't been with you lately. I've been busy. I've been resting basically. So we need to go ahead and do the book of Exodus. We're not going to do all of Exodus, but we're going to do I think it's not 50 chapters, about 40 chapters. But what I may be able to do is just try and give you guys an outline of what I don't do. We'll read some of it, and then the rest of it I'm going to give you an outline of it, because what I've decided is I have to come back and read the Old Testament, but it won't be until the fall of next year, because I'm going to take a summer break. So what I'm going to do is the chapters that I don't read, I'm going to give you an outline. And what you can do, is when I'm on my break, you guys can go through the outline and kind of go over it a little bit. And when we come back, it'll be probably the end of August, or it'll be the first week of September. We're going to start reading where we're going to pick up where we left off, which is going to be Leviticus, because I'm going to read half of Exodus. We only have this week and next week. We're going to read half, and then I'm going to give you an outline of the rest of Exodus. I'm going to give you a quick outline of Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and whatever the other chapters are in the Old Testament. And then mid-March, we're going right into the New Testament. We're going right into where we're supposed to be, where we should be right now, actually right now. Because, we live in a New Testament time. We're not living in Old Testament time. But sometimes it's good to know your history, because it'll help you with where you are now once you know the history of something. So this is my second cup. Sometimes I do about 3 cups in the morning. This is my second cup. Let me get my glasses and let's get right on it. We're going to start reading Exodus chapter 1. We left off at the end of, hold on, let me get back. We left off at the end of Genesis, where Joseph died, and he didn't want to be buried where everybody else was buried, in the graveyard of his fathers and his grandfather and all of them. He said, take me to the promised land. He said, whenever you go, take my body. He said, take these dry bones with you. Take my bones with you to where you're going. We telling his grandkids, basically, and by the time they get there, so many years later, it's going to be a whole nother generation that goes into this new promised land. It won't even be his kids or his grand. It's going to be a whole nother generation of people. But it's going to be Moses. It's going to be down that line of lineage of Joseph people. So it's so crazy, how time goes. Time turns. Time is like this. And you could sit and look at something, and the next day is 5 years later, and you're like, wow, I lost this here. Don't lose your time, guys. Keep moving, keep doing, keep advancing your life, because time go, and you'll look up and you'll be an old age person. Look at how the people in the Bible raised their kids, tilled the land, did all the things. Next thing you know, you're in the second or the third generation of the people. And they lived to be 130, 140. And they said, well, it's time for me to go. And they gave up the ghost. They said, so you guys don't be afraid, thinking people when they're younger, they're so afraid. Oh, I'm afraid to die. When people get old, guess what? They look forward. Because their body is getting old and breaking down. And they say, I know that God brought me here, and God is going to take me when I go. So they like, hey, let me just educate everybody on what to do in this world. Because they're looking forward to going to the next world. This is not the only world. This is not the only existence. There's other existence, guys. Can you imagine another heaven? Can you imagine a place much more wonderful and beautiful, somewhere where you don't have to worry about sickness in your body and troubles and things? This place exists. Can you imagine this? I've never been there, but I've been listening to people that say that they've been to places and they've died and come back. You know, I look at all kind of stories, and the way that they tell the stories, they are so believable. I said, this person didn't make this up. This really happened. You know what I'm saying? So it's so interesting. Can you imagine there being a heaven for every language? Can you imagine there being a heaven for you, for your like, for a heaven for Japanese people, a heaven for, and there's all one God, a heaven for all these different nationalities. We and all the people there are the same kind of people. Or can you imagine it being a heaven where nobody's looking at what type of person it is? That you're all angelic beings, you're all just beams of light. Can you imagine all of these things? So these things exist. You would be shocked, but they do. So looking forward to leaving here could be a good thing, you know, once you lived your whole life and everything. So that's why you see the old people start preparing and telling people how they want their funeral and what they want to have. Because they're like, I didn't live my whole life and did everything I wanted to do, you know what I'm saying? And it's not one of those things where you say, this is everything I did in life. Now there's only one thing left to do. You know what I'm saying? Or is it? So anyway, let's go ahead on. We're going to start reading. I got to find my glasses. They should be right here. And we're going to get right into Exodus. So I've spent 6 minutes talking about nothing. But let's get right on into it. Hold on a second here, guys. Sometimes you could spend time doing things and you're like, wow, where did the time go? And you were doing nothing. And time is just moving. Time just spinning. So always spend your time doing something that's very important to you so that you know that you took great advantage and you really yielded some progress in that time. You don't want your years of your time to be wasted, misspent on things that it shouldn't have been. Looking back and saying woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know what I'm saying? You want your years to be well spent doing things that you really enjoyed and with people you really enjoyed being around. That's what you really want to look forward to in life. You know. And if those people are not there, hey, enjoy your family members. Do what you can to enjoy your life. That's all you can do. All right, guys. Let's get into it. So we're in Exodus 1. And let's start. Now, let's see here. This is my study Bible. So, what happened here in Egypt? The whole story of the Bible is about God. It's not about the people. The people existed and believed in Him. And that's what kept their lives going and going and going for so long until they were ancient, you know. And then they went on and passed away. It says here the main purpose of the book of Exodus is to describe God's rescue of His enslaved people and His making them a nation. He's rescuing them. He's exiting them from where they were. They're going to be exiting out of what they're doing. Exiting the whole mindset and everything. What a whole mindset takes many, many, many years later to change. But the fact that they don't want to be in bondage anymore. So He's helping them to come out of that situation before they get to where they're supposed to go. They have to come out of the mindset of they're enslaved, and they have to come out of the hands and grips of the power of the time where they were being used to work as do what I tell you to do, how I tell you to do it, and you gonna get paid. They got to come out of that, you know, so the God is the one who's going to exit them. So it says Exodus, it says here, in spite of their sin, it says the book chronicles God's faithfulness to His people in spite of their sin. In spite of whatever they did, He was faithful. The book of Genesis closes with the family of Israel making a home in Egypt under the leadership of Joseph. Now, Exodus pick up centuries later in Egypt after the family of Israel has grown into the nation of Israel. Now, while Joseph has saved the Egyptians from starvation, his family descendants have become slaves. They all have become slaves. Exodus follows the story of God's people from the birth of Moses, the leader of Israel, during the period in their history through their deliverance from bondage, the giving of the law, and the construction of the tabernacle in the desert. So in basically in Exodus, they were slaves. Okay, I can just about tell you this. Moses, he's going to be raised up. He's not going to like the fact of how they treat them because these were his people. But they had become so needy of whatever they needed in the land until they began to give themselves as whatever, and they were being used to get their needs met. They become slaves. So Moses didn't like the fact that they were beating them and harming them and doing things like that. And God saw his heart. And he decided, just like he used Abraham, he used Isaac, and he used Jacob. He used Jacob's son, Joseph. He decided, I'm going to use Moses to help save these people out of bondage. And so let's pick up on chapter 1. Israel in Egypt. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Now you remember Jacob had sons, right? The sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, all of these sons, all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Joseph was already in Egypt. You know, his body. And Joseph died, and all he was in Egypt because he was the governor. Joseph died, and all his brethren and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. These are all Jacob's sons. Remember, he had all those sons. And then he had sons by other women and things like that. So he had a lot. He had 70. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we are. Come on, let's deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us. So get them up out of the land. So they want to get them out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Python and Ramses. Let's see what the treasure cities and all of that is. It says it's most likely that the king referred to here is new in a very significant sense. He represents not only a new person, but also a new dynasty. The fear of Pharaoh are of interest. He fears the numerical strength of the Israelites and seeks to diminish them. He fears that they will become allies with the enemy and overcome the Egyptians and leave Egypt. Now, Pharaoh's plan is to enslave the Israelites and tighten control over them. As a substantial part of the plan seems to be that of intimidation and oppression, so demoralizing and frightening the Israelites that they will not dare to resist their masters. Yet, just as the Israelites had greatly multiplied during the time of Joseph, Genesis 47 and 27, and after his death. So they continue to multiply under the cruel hand of the taskmaster. They continue to have children, offspring. The Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. Pharaoh's demands of the midwives are quite abominable. It says not only does he propose acts of violence on the innocent, but he also passes on all responsibility for death of these Hebrew infants. He wants the midwives to solve this national dilemma of Hebrew birthright. But the midwives fear God more than Pharaoh, so they refuse to put the infant boys to death. Now, Pharaoh's plan backfires. God rewards the midwives for fearing him by enabling them to be fruitful themselves. So they wanted to kill the Israelite children. They said, get them when they come in. Don't let them grow up. Kill them when their mama have them, because they kept having a lot of offspring. They were very fruitful. And so Pharaoh said, well, tell the midwives. So the midwives started having children too. They were all having children. So the midwives didn't want to kill the Israelite baby because they were happy that they were getting pregnant, So they were all having children. Isn't that something? Don't this sound like a familiar story where you see the population of a people growing and the government, the king was like the president. And the president and the government of governors of places say, let's instill a way that they can get rid of them if they want to. They don't have to have them. Let's instill abortions. Don't that sound familiar? You know what I'm saying? Let's keep them enslaved. You see, for fear that they may have somebody that may be a strong child come up and pull them out of bondage. Who knows who they might have? Might have Moses. See what I'm saying? You don't know. My mom used to say, you don't know what kind of baby you have, and you might have the next president of the world or the next leader. People don't know what kind of child that God bringing up in here and what the God putting in that seed. When he bring that seed through that birth canal, that's his. You don't know what he planted the seed in the earth for, what this child here for. This child could be coming here for a specific reason. Look at how Jesus Christ came on in here from Virgin Mary. You don't know what this child coming to the world to do. Anyway, it looks like my battery want to run out. So guys, we're going to finish reading this. But what happened in chapter 1 was they wanted the midwives to kill the babies. And they said no, because they started having babies. God demanded them to stop, and they did. So next, the birth of Moses is chapter 2 in Exodus. We'll pick it up there. I got to charge my phone.